Hi guys. What just happened to the telly? Oh, hang on. Where is it? There it is.
Oh, intense. Oh.
There it is. Hey Diane, good to see you. Oh man.
Well, hello everybody. How's everybody doing? Thanks for joining us on this very special hour with John Whitberg. We have a very amazing show here today, and thank you all for joining us. So,
Hey Diane, good to see you.
I'm rendering a video right now for Mrs. Danny Henderson. So hopefully there's not going to be any noise in the background, but
Oh man, why don't you
yeah,
keep doing
I
that?
can't help that, guys. But anyway, let's continue on with our featured guest of honor, John, who was part of the Montualk program and then was later transferred into Project Looking Glass. And we're going to go into all these different facets of his experiences. And by the way, visit my website at supersoldiertalk.com. There is a great interview that Daniel Sala put together with John.
Oh, it's already glaring. Hang on, guys.
I don't know if I'll be able to top that interview, but I will do my best. So, okay. So John served in the secret space program under different alter names. John's alter was sent to Vega Prime, and then later in Solar Warden. His other alter, Heinrich, is a German diplomatic officer who was loaned out to the Deep Space Fleet Space Navy, which is another name for the JDFC, the Joint Defense Force Command. During this time, he was tasked with setting up new trade agreements, settling disputes, and setting up colonies within the breakaway. Heinrich was stationed on the USS Hochler, which is 6 miles long. His second alter, Jared, is an archaeologist in the ICC, and John believes he is still alive. Another alter of his, Adam, served in Solar Warden, which later split into Radiant Guardian. Adam also served on the Europa. Served on planet Europa, sorry. Planet Europa, on the moon, sorry. New Nuremberg on the moon Titan, Victoria Colony on Mars, and also on the moon of Ganymede. Adam served as an immigration officer for our solar system. Today, John will be talking more about this and his Alex Alter, who was stationed at Montauk in the 1960s and then transferred to Project Looking Glass in the mid-70s. So, maybe, I got a little tidbit on here about Planet Centurion, where he met Paul Serene, who was the head of Monarch. John?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Wow, this is quite a list on your bio. How many years do you think you actually served out there?
I did the math once. It's somewhere roughly like close to 300 years.
Wow. So I guess we can joke about it. So I'm assuming your pension fund must have millions of dollars in it, but the reality of the situation is you were pretty much utilized as a slave, I guess.
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, in their opinion, They considered it a privilege to work for them for 300 years. So that's why they think they don't need to pay you or pay us. For
I
other.
guess so.
Okay. All right. Well, would you like to add anything else to that bio?
Oh,
that I might have
no
missed?
way.
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, let's go back to your early Montauk.
Diane, you won't believe this. I just heard Welcome Back, Cotter. What was that on, Gabe? That song? On the Flash or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard Welcome Back, Cotter a couple of days ago, and now you bring it up now.
Experiences. So how does this? How would you actually start this story here that you went through?
Well, that is a difficult question to answer because from that very early phase, a lot of the memories are very fragmented. But one of the possible narratives I've put together, and the one that makes the most sense to me, is that I'm actually someone named Alexander Bromsley who was born in the 1950s, and that I'm currently displaced in time, and that he was one of the first kids taken to Montauk in the early 60s. And so
Well, how did you get? Hold on. How did you get from the modern era, the current present, back to the 1960s, or is this another? Your soul has been fragmented in another life stream. How does this work?
From what I can tell, I was, like I said, I was born in the 50s, so I was a kid in the 60s, and I was taken there. From what I can,
Yeah, Talia, I did notice that. Beware King Charles. It's got over 1,000 views. And my subs are picked up on 173 now.
recall, I was taken there in a van, in a black van.
I was looking at Di's links. That's why I didn't reply.
Bless you.
Sorry. From, I believe I was literally snatched from outside my home, and that my family, who is also not my biological family, that I was with at the time, that's a whole other story, but the family I was with at the time had their minds wiped, and it was as if I had never existed. And so then I have a pretty distinctive memory of arriving at Camp Hero, being led. Well, first there was the processing, as they called it, in the radio tower, where we had our names taken. We were stripped down, hosed off, and shaved.
How old were you, John, at this particular point?
I was 7.
Okay. And what was the state of your mind? Were you like asking for your parents? Do you remember, or?
I was, and the funny thing is, I still can't even remember their names. But I was
Diane, did we already watch this one? I think we might have.
asking for them, and I was terrified. Like, I had no idea what was happening to me. Given the era, I probably kind of thought I'd been kidnapped by the Soviets or something.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay. In Earth Mysteries, we'll do that one.
It will cause really big damage. So
I wonder if they'll bump RFK off like they did his dad and his uncle. Wow, that looks good. Listen to what it says. Peter shares his knowledge of ancient Earth history, destruction of Mars, his experience of the Busecchi Mountain facility, Monarch Solutions Incorporated, chemtrails, planes, his trips on a them triangle UFOs, and how to remove black goo. Wow, this guy's covering it all.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Super Solar Talk. I'm James Rink, and I have Peter, the insider, with me today. And we're going to continue our conversation into the unknown. I guess what's actually maybe unknown, at least to Peter, but maybe not known to us. So I guess the last conversation, well, we've done already 2 interviews already. The last interview we did, we talked about some of the extraterrestrial presence, and we also mentioned that we have ability for people to get access to the.
It's not beyond them, Diane, as you know. They killed Epstein. You wouldn't expect them to get to Epstein, but they killed him.
Their file. So that information is going to be in the video description contents. So you can, if you want to, if you think you're a MyLab, or if you've been involved with, I guess, extraterrestrial contact, and you think the ACIO might have a file on you, then I mean, even if they don't, then nothing. It's always worth a try. So, without any further ado, Peter, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, great. So, Peter, I have a list of some questions today. I'm not sure which direction you want to take it, but I guess we can maybe start off with your implant, because some people had concerns that your implant was possibly well, they want to know who's controlling it. Are you controlling the implant in your head? I guess maybe I should mention, people who are new. You claimed you had an implant that is able to induce telekinesis, or is that what it is? Or is
it, not only that, it is very complicated, but not only like that. It can, make telekinesis. It is only one ability. Hypnosis to another people, to myself too, to go into deeper levels of subconscious, to communicate telepathically with people. It is, very, very useful and handy thing, but you need to know how to work with that, because it can become very dangerous.
Is that like where you're talking about the mark of the beast, and you're plugged into an AI computer and
for example, something like that? Yeah.
Well, how do we know that you're not infected with black goo? I'm assuming. I think you mentioned. Did you mention the black goo? Or hopefully you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, black goo. It means black goo is the same as PPAI, what means pathologic predatory artificial intelligence. That's the thing that black goo, they are black goos. They are causing people always only trouble. I mean, like blackouts, when they are not, how can I say that, really black out. I mean, they don't seems to be for their surroundings, but they've got no memories for certain specific period of time. Yeah.
Okay,
and
so it's like a blackout.
Their last memories, they're in first a certain specific time and place, and then just like blink of eye, and they are in completely different time and completely different place, and no memories what happened between this period of time.
Is that Hey, the same Ben, as good to see ya.
You mean like sleepwalking?
No, like a soul that allegedly leaves the body during like a near-death experience, and then
You mean like that? Yes, something the same, very similar. Not the same, but very similar. Yeah, but via PPAI they are abusing your body because your body they changed it for vessel to
vessel.
do vessel to commit everything.
I don't understand that word.
Vessel, like just.
I don't believe. I think we saw this one as well, Diane. Okay, let's do his super soldier one. Hang on. Yeah, this one. We've seen that one as well, Diane, because I remember you were struggling with the word vessel.
Yes, but that's the thing. It's
Hello, everybody. James Frank here. It is July 6th, 2016, and I'm with Peter again. Today, we're going to have another Q&A session to answer some of the questions not only left over from last week, but as well as a few new questions that have yet to be answered. Peter, are you there?
So hello to you and hello to everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter, for joining us. And how are you doing?
Considering all crazy circumstances, good. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay. And I think one of the things we need to bring up first thing on the agenda is this so-called, accessing our files, because some people.
Okay, this is a Q&A. I'll save this for later. Hang on, where is it? Yeah, that's it.
Me privately with the military officers at Nellis Air Force Base, but it'd be done in private.
Oh, have we seen this one as well?
All right, so go to the description section of this, I guess this link, wherever this is going to post. I'm probably going to post this over to Rumble as well, so check the description. There's a
wow, glad you pulled out of that, Diane.
Email address in there. You can send me a message if you want. You can also go to my website. I have a contact form on there too if you want to do all that. So it's easier. SuperSoldierTalk.com is my website. Another website you can go to, which I'll be absolutely thrilled if you go to, is Neological Tech. You get a copy of my book on there. It's called Lone Wolf, and get yourself a meditation cube to help you relax. So let's see here. Be sure to like and subscribe. I guess I still have this channel amazingly. They're allowing me to still broadcast here, so I'm gonna use it as much as I can, as long as I can. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, audience members, for your great questions and input. Thank you, Jimmy Payne, for coming on here today and sharing again. So let's all, I'll see you later. I think, I've got some more.
Man.
Definitely got a lot more content coming up. I just got back from Sedona, Arizona, and I got like 4 interviews I'm going to get posted on the channel soon. So stay tuned for all that. And may you all have a wonderful day wherever you are. So Jimmy, just go ahead and stay on here with me, okay? And then go ahead and hit the conclusion. See you all. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm not sure which one we watched, guys, so that's why I'm just double checking everything. I thought I'd done it better before I got started streaming. Hang on. I'll just put this on for now. Hang on.
again with us, Jessica Ariel Morocco. And of course, her website is Readings by Ariel, and she is a psychic, intuitive, clairvoyant, and I guess she also does channeling. So she's going to be sharing her perspective for some.
Okay. Now this one I know we haven't watched.
Right. Well, okay. So someone suggested that. Hello, everybody. James Frank here. It is July 6th, 2016, and I'm with Peter again. Today, we're going to have another Q&A session to answer some of the questions not only left over from last week, but as well as a few new questions that have yet to be answered. So, Peter, are you there?
So hello to you and hello to everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter, for joining us. And how are you doing?
Considering all crazy circumstances, good. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay. And I think one of the things we need to bring up first thing on the agenda is this so-called, well, accessing our files, because some people, I know you have the ability through your ACIO contacts. And again, the ACIO is the Alien Contact Intelligence Organization, which Peter is affiliated with, or well, I guess a division head of. And so you have ability to access information about extraterrestrial or MyLab files. And
Yes, it's not about. This is very important. Not only my lab. It's ET agenda. It's my lab agenda. It's I don't know like experiments. I mean DNA shifting experiments. All these kind of agendas. Different kind of agendas.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm trying to bring up here, or elaborate on, is that the list has actually grown quite substantial. So are we going to close that down pretty soon, or is it still open?
No. We just will take some more time because I've got pretty rough time in job, and things are going really messy.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that common people all around the world, they are definitely they definitely can be happy and should be happy that they don't know what's going on. I mean, what's really going on, right?
Oh, you mean like some people that get do a session with you, that they're not happy with what you tell them?
No, I mean about actual agendas, because situation is going very messy with all this world, right? And I don't want to be more precise, but
Yeah, tell you, the cane was like a feather duster, and they'd whack your fingers with it, and you get really bad welts. It's illegal now to do it in school. They've taken that away. You can't do that anymore. But yeah, I used to get the cane a lot.
I don't want to scare people, right? That's the thing.
Okay. So there you have it. Again, if you want to sign up for the list, the directions are in the description section in this video. So with that said, let's continue on here. Now, some people expressed some frustration from the video last week on why blacks are suppressed. And I know you mentioned that they had some past karma, and then I mentioned perhaps it might have had to do something with the Martian Wars, but we sort of didn't really delve into that a little bit more. Could you elaborate more on what the karma was for this?
Yeah, that's good question, because
Diane, I just had a growth cut out of my bottom eyelid, I thought it was skin cancer. It's come up like a big wart with like within about 2 days, 3 days. So I got it. It wasn't. It was benign though. It wasn't malignant.
Karma isn't like. Mm, hmm. Karma isn't mathematics, right? It's like, eh, technically, yes, it is mathematics, but it is so complicated that I mean, mankind, with our ability of comprehension, wasn't able to make some uh, mathematic formula how to determine karma. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So there can be, and I'm myself personally, I'm pretty sure that there was pretty much countless factors. They caused uh, bad karma for Africans people. I mean, from black people, because there are not only black people in Africa, but most of them are black. Yeah. So that's the thing. But we've got only very um, few pieces of mm, of knowledge, of wisdom about, and that's the thing. Not only about wisdom, but uh, evidence. What caused? What is the cause of all this? Yeah, that's the problem. And because of that, I don't want to tell people things I am. We are not. I mean, we in ACIO are not sure of, right?
Well, okay. So someone suggested that perhaps during the time of Atlantis, the black race created a slave race of white people. Is there any?
Yes, but that's the thing. It's this is not enough as a reason for such bad karma. This is not enough. Okay? No, 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 no. It's one of. We know that this is one of factor, but it is not enough. Once again, no, no, definitely not.
So it almost sounds like perhaps they may have made some deals with some negative extraterrestrials.
No,
Nothing like that.
with some negative um astral beings. Yeah, that will be that's more probable.
Okay. Now, do you think this karma can be transmuted during this period of this? So,
Okay, I'm not enjoying that one either. This one looks interesting. There it is.
These in um,
I just turned it up.
well, hello everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm James Rink, and you are listening to Super Soldier Talk. And today we actually are going to bring on two super soldiers to share their story, rather our story, because I'm one, and so is Apollonie Mandelian, who was very gracious to join us here tonight, and as well as all the listeners here in the chat. Thank you also for joining us. And so there's some great questions in the chat. Well, I'm going to try to get to answer some of your questions, but let me go ahead and introduce Apollonie by reading her bio, and then we'll we'll cue her to share some more information that she'd like to share. So, Apollonie Mandelian is a super soldier hybrid mix of dragon and Pelagian or Palladian DNA created by Darkfleet and the ICC, which stands for the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. She has been recruited into Project Mind Control, Project MK Ultra, Project Crest, aka Stargate, Project Carbon, and then underwent an iLab, of which she took her to Section 13, 32C at Area 52, located in Area 51. From there, she was sent into the boot camp at Camp Livingston in Louisiana, where she was trained by NAZI's Aryans, that is known as Project Ashwat, Children of God, to make the most supreme super soldiers in the universe, according to them anyway. From there, she resumed her training at Section 1332C to make her battle ready for military combat and psionic missions. The treatment she and others like her received was atrocious. She recalls being forced to eat gruel, and she had to wear disciplinary shock collars. One day, she was raped, and then she lost it and rebelled by killing 3 of her military superiors that were in upper management. Normally, when something like that would take place, they would scrap a rebellious soldier. However, because she's a super soldier and they spent millions on her, they decided it was best to send her to the Draconian Mars base as punishment to help her understand how good she had it at Section 1332C. So, we've discussed this in previous show. This is, like I said, this is the 3rd interview she's done. So you're gonna have to go back and listen to some of the other interview if you want to listen about that, because we're going to share a different mission here today. But continuing on here, Apollonie also remembers training in Inner Earth with some blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, and she also participated in Project Blue Book, which helped the military understand various ET technologies and missions, both dimensional and off-world. So yeah, we're going to go into this Draco battle today, which took place on 3.5 Delta Quadrant on a moon near Sirius, and I don't know what Sirius it is, but Apollonie will be sharing some of their latest missions, as well as answering some of the Q&A from the audience members' questions. And I've included a link to some of her websites if you want to reach out and contact her. So thank you, Apollonie, for coming on here.
Thank you for having me. Doing okay.
Great. All right. So is there anything else you'd like to add to that bio that I might have missed?
It's okay, my end.
No, that'll be fine for now.
Okay, awesome. So we've actually done some work together to try to determine some missions that you have been on, and it's even though you were in Section 1332C and I was over at Kruger, they sometimes will loan us out, and there was an actual particular point in time where our paths crossed out there. So today what we're going to do is we're going to present some information that Apollonie has recalled through, I guess you could say, regression or a meditation experience that helped you to see some of this information. So yesterday we spent probably about a couple hours putting all this together. So I guess it's been agreed that I'm going to be the one narrating this. However, these are actually Apollonie's words. So for people out there who want to put comments in the chat that I'm not letting her speak, I actually am letting her speak. This is all her words. So with my editorial skills. So without further ado, and by the way, I will allow Apollonie to comment once we get through this, as we get through it. Okay. So Apollonie now is on a planet with soil that is tannish red color. There's no flora or fauna here. It is all rock and barren. She's able to determine that her name is Epsilon Queen, and she's approximately 4 foot 6 inches tall and wearing a black uniform. That is her original body. She is in some kind of alien hybrid body that looks like it has elf ears, crimson red hair, and green eyes. Her name was given to her by her scientist handler and rated by abilities or specialities. There are also 4 people in front of her, 2 standing and 2 are sitting down on a rock. They are from different factions of her group. She is an original female hybrid body. Some of the other people are hybrids and some are humans. She thinks, okay, I got that. Yeah, the comment was Epsilon. She thinks her name is Epsilon Queen. Okay, so I think the person Star Shooter is he standing? So he's in front of you.
He is off to the left side of me.
Okay, Star Shooter is a human hybrid male. He's probably around 6'5", and I'm gonna get some more information about Star Shooter in just a bit. But the person next to Star Shooter is not human. The skin color is tan. He is taller too, about 6'8". There's also an insectoid type human sitting down. He has green skin, light green skin, and he's very cybernetic. And then I'm there, 6'2", brown hair, short hair, fade. They call me Sabretooth, and also is very cybernetic. So that's where, if you look at the picture of the video, the left eye.
That's such a cool name, Sabretooth.
Heat-seeking, right eye normal. All of us are wearing the same skin type uniform from head to toe with white boots. The uniform looks white with blue with no text or insignia designs. Everyone has a helmet on except Sabretooth and the Mantis. Apparently, those two individuals didn't need breathing apparatus because of the cybernetics. The mission was to be the backup for the mission because they were, it says here, getting attacked by other ET factions in the area. They accepted group's assistance for stronger firepower. Can you please, Apollo, can you explain what was going on with that?
So the faction that Sabretooth ended up working for ended up hiring Section 13 members for stronger backup.
Okay, and
short and
do
sweet.
you have any information on why these Draco wanted to invade this world?
No, they don't give us that information. They just give us our objective and end up sending us on our way.
Okay, well, let's just assume there was some kind of research facility or colony outpost there. How come the locals didn't take up arms and try to fight the Draco themselves? Why do they need to send 5, 6 super soldiers out there? Don't they have their own security? Okay.
They don't tell us anything. They literally give us our objective, and we don't even know where we're going half of the time. So.
Wow.
All right. So from there, we move to the rendezvous point, which is some kind of field area and taking station. So I'm assuming this is also kind of desert planet, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very barren. There's no floral fauna animals that we saw in the area.
It doesn't take very long for the Draconian ships to show up. The fighting starts. They start touching ground, and then Sabretooth ended up firing, and we got into better positions into enemy lines. We ended up flanking them both on both sides of the team of 6 people now because another scout showed up. And as a small group, we were able to effectively fight the Draconians and were victorious. However, Star Shooter, he's the human hybrid male, about 6'5". He was injured on his leg by the Draconians. Do you remember what specifically injured him? Did they bite him or something? What happened?
I'm not entirely sure. I was fighting elsewhere. When we started running away from the ships, we just noticed that his leg was injured and 2 of the members were carrying him out, like on their shoulders.
Okay. So let's see here. There were five ships touched down. We're not sure how many Draconians came out to battle. But okay, so Sabretooth ended up taking up most of the small henchmen, reptilians, while Apollo and me focus on eliminating the Draconians using her psionic abilities. She can create some kind of nuclear explosion, and afterward the team, well, I guess that the team had to safely evacuate the area before that explosion took place. Okay, so after that happened, no one was left. The Draco ships were blown up, and we also jammed their signals to prevent calls for backup. Okay, so at this point, well, do you want to comment about anything else about any of this?
So when I first met the entire team, we were just kind of off on one of the areas. We actually had to move from that area further away in order when we saw the ships coming down, and that's when the battle started. So I ended up going with one of the other members, and we ended up kind of flanking them. And then Sabretooth ended up opening fire when some of the Draconians, lackeys, basically started coming out of the ships, and we just ended up in this huge like firefight. Basically, I ended up fighting at least two of the Draconians, mostly on my own, and then the team that Sabretooth was on ended up fighting kind of elsewhere. I usually take my battles kind of off to the side just because I can be a little destructive. There's very few party members that I usually get assigned with who can basically battle with me. And then we ended up subduing those guys, getting onto their ships, jamming their codes, and then I told you guys to run, and then I ended up doing my most devastating ability, which is literally creating a nuclear explosion. If you guys want the physics of that, I basically create an energy ball to the point where it creates a gravitational flow and then just collapse it. So.
Yeah. Do you know how big the blast radius was?
Big enough to take out 5 ships. So I couldn't really tell you. I mean, the ships were pretty decent sized. And each of them had at least 20 people coming out of it.
So I guess the moral of the story is we shouldn't try to get you upset. Did you ever have a Carrie moment? I don't know, Steve, have you ever seen Stephen King movie Carrie? Nothing like that has happened to you in your civilian life?
I've had some pretty interesting things happen to me in my civilian life. I've had my eyes turn crimson red. I've had things move towards me. I've scared a lot of people. I've made people tell the truth. So yeah, I do have abilities. It's just with my augmentation, it blocks a lot of it out. I have also phased through objects physically in my civilian life as well, and more than just the door when I was 4.5 years old. I do have some friends that I like to spar with, and I've actually phased through them before. And they said it was very cold and the most bone-chilling thing they've ever experienced.
All right.
It's a detail you don't make up.
I mean, we could discuss more of these abilities, or we could just continue on here with the presentation. Which direction would you like to take this?
We can continue on with the presentation. I don't want to derail too much.
Sure. All right, so now we go into some conversation. So we are able to pick up some, Okay, so this message is from Sabretooth to me. He referred to me as James 2.52. You need to unlock yourself. The memories will be painful. Once you survive that, you can get strong to come find me. Sabretooth will show you the rest of the way. So question is, how come, I guess, we as general, as super soldiers, or us in SSP, have trouble remembering these memories? And the answer is from Sabretooth, James 2.52. You are a clone of me. You will get residual memories because of the consciousness link. So our alters, so basically these memories are being conducted in other clone bodies off world. So technically it's almost like a dream, an astral. So sometimes when you wake up, you don't necessarily remember your dream, but if it's being done in another realm, the rate of time may not be the same, as well as the memories are located in another physical vessel. Is that probably a good way to look at it? The reason why the memories don't bleed through?
So if you really kind of want to think about it, and I started to realize that I started having these in when I went to my boot camp in Camp Livingston. Most people would consider this what they call the avatar program, where they put an augment in your brain and then you are controlling a body, usually a clone of yourself, out in space or somewhere else. And the feedback is almost like Wi-Fi. You feel everything and you can control your other body almost completely. And sometimes they put you in your clone, sometimes they put you in other species bodies, and that takes a while to get used to and control because you have to like analyze everything of that, their abilities and bodily functions. But I guess that would be like the best example that people can relate to. I finally watched the show. Finally. And someone had to sit me down and make me watch it. It was an okay show, but there was a lot of disclosure in there that I was actually surprised on. But the neurolinking system for the avatars, for controlling a body elsewhere, and the memory share is kind of the same, but they don't put you in tube chambers. It's literally like an augment that's like this big. So it's a lot more advanced, I guess. But sometimes all the memory will transfer over, sometimes not. And it also depends if they're going to wipe your memories or suppress your memories after your mission.
Okay. Later on, I'm going to read a little bit from my book later on, but let's continue going on because about this. Okay, so our question: are our alters out there aware of us in the here and now? And the answer is yes, because they're usually more psionic than they would want us to be down here. Okay, next question: where is this location in its 3.5 Delta Quadrant, moon near Sirius? And more about the conflict. The Draconians are pushing this fleet to make this way to take territory. We were successful. I tried to find out what information the super soldiers were working for, and we just are getting silence, turning of head and quiet from the group. Why? Maybe it's because they didn't know, or they weren't even told.
It sounded like they just didn't really want to disclose any of that information.
All right. So we ask, do you have any family or children out there? The answer is no. I'm not sure who that question was. Was that? But anyway, question. Oh, I guess that was for me. But for Ptolemy, family or children, you got that. You have Absalom Queen out there in that mission was only 9 years old. They put her in a chamber to age her to 13 years old and then put into service. Is that correct? Am I getting that?
And then they would age regress us back.
Do you actually remember the technology that they used to age regress you?
They ended up putting us in these weird chambers. So that's all that I really know.
Was the process painful?
It kind of burned a little bit. I mean, other than that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's go on here. Some more information about Sabretooth. He's 45 years old, but he looks like he's 20. He has cybernetics, left eye heat-seeking, visual schematics, reads locational coordinates, left arm is cybernetic. He got his pieces but sterile. He's muscular but athletic build, no tattoos, weapons, pistol, plasma blaster by side, and a Bowie knife. Boots are blue, helmet has a HUD display. Sabretooth's psionic abilities include telepathy, psychokinesis, amongst others. More information about Epsilon Queen. Well, actually, let me pause. Do you want to add anything else to that? Oh, are you still there? Actually, am I still here? Am I still on here?
She's frozen. She's back.
You froze up. Okay, now you're.
Sorry about that. My internet decided to just kick off for some reason.
Did you hear what I said?
All I heard was a description about a Bowie knife.
A Bowie knife. Let me go back here. A Bowie knife. Boots are blue. Helmet has HUD display. And Sabretooth's psionic abilities include telepathy, psychokinesis, amongst others. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's about it.
Okay. Epsilon Queen. She is carrying blades and a blaster, but she mostly uses her psionic abilities. For example, she can create a nuclear blast. She also has a black sniper rifle, which she rarely uses. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay.
I mean, most of our Section 13 outfits are usually black, like all of our suits and everything.
All right. The insectoid has the ability of telepathy and mind control, and also being able to sense people's movements. Star Shooter is one of the top combat experts in firearms. He has precognitive abilities. He is also a private person and was not very cooperative in this project. So,
He didn't want to talk to me like at all very much.
okay.
He's good on the battlefield though.
So a message from Epsilon Queen. That's your altar there. Follow me. So the message is, I don't enjoy hurting people, but this is the only time I get to be my true self in my true form. We don't belong in society, and we are also treated like crap. The head staff take pleasure in torturing us and keep us training all the time to keep us battle ready. So as far as trying to recover your memories from this altar, was not cooperative. The answer is, at this point, you can just access, I guess we can access the Akashic record is what message we got for that. Okay, well, that's basically it. Then you go back into your body. So anything else you'd like to add about this particular experience?
The regression or the mission?
G'day, Barry. Good to see you, mate.
Whatever you want to add. I mean, like, who's this James 2.52? Who's that?
It's supposed to be you.
What? Why? Wait, so, okay, wait a minute. Typically, clones are not given names, they're given numbers. So,
Wow, that's interesting.
how do you assume? I mean, I remember having a childhood. Why are you assuming I'm a clone? Who's that?
Well, even clones have childhoods. I mean, I'm starting to figure out that I've had several clones throughout my entire birth and existence down here. So, which is definitely not what I was expecting at all. Like, I wasn't expecting to find any of this information on myself at all. So, and they have my original body apparently out in space that they keep all the time so that they can keep making clones of me, like, and putting me down here. But that answer was literally what Sabretooth had given me during the regression to give to you. So I don't really know his train of thought or the full knowledge that he had on that.
All right. Okay. Well, should I go ahead and just pull up some questions from the audience members, if you like?
Yeah, we can do that. And then there is another mission that I have that I can go into as well, if you want.
All right. Let's see here.
I can't even spell Spanday, so there you go.
So I'm looking for questions relevant to what we were just discussing. I know there's a lot of good questions in the chat, and there happen to be a few that are not so good. But how long does it take? How long does age regression take in Earth time from Francine? What do you think?
How long does age regression take from? I'm not entirely sure, because when you go through the process, it is definitely disorienting. I mean, because like you're literally basically aging your entire body, and I'm not entirely sure on the full technology of that. I don't know if they're just messing with your quantum field, which literally kind of stops your brain process in the time. I remember some of the pain, the burning sensation, and then after that, I just kind of black out all the time. So it took me a while to realize that they were, like, back then, this is in the 80s, okay, and in the early 90s. Back then, they did not have, Section 13 did not have the technology that they do now. It's really advanced within the last couple, I'd say 20, not 20 years, but like the last seven years at least. And I just got back in after a very long hiatus, I guess you could say. Apparently, after killing 3 of the high members, they decided to bring me in after a while.
Oh man, leave me alone. I don't wear Spando.
It was I got kicked out of Section 13 when I was about 11 to 12 years old. And they had just brought me back in almost 6 years ago. That's a huge gap.
All right. Well, Francine, I mean, I guess the answer and my response to that is it varies based on the group and the technology they have, but I think if it's LOC, Lunar Operations, Lunar Space Command, typically it's 1 week for every 10 years. So yeah, typically a 20-year service. You have to be restrained for 2 weeks, and it's not not much fun there. Actually, none of this is really much fun, except maybe the time they allow us to have ship leave if you happen to be a high enough officer, not a slave.
Well, I kind of liked the fighting. It was one of the best things.
Okay, so let's move on here. My question is, James, is she stuck on a time loop?
In what context? Like I've parallel universe jumped before where I've relived years, even though some of the events were different.
I think what Chaotic is asking is about your life as Epsilon Queen. Is that in the here and now, or is that back in time, or is that in the future?
No, it would be the here and now.
So not only you're here, you're also out there too. Your soul is in the same body, different bodies.
Well, that depends. I do have a lot of clones of me out there that I've noticed and have realized, but they only have certain. It's like fragmentation, so they only have like a certain part of me. But this consciousness, when I go on missions, which I get picked up almost every night, this consciousness goes on those missions. I do have the ability to tap into some of my clones where I can get residual feedback and whatnot, but it's not constant like when I'm on my missions.
Question from RV There Yet.
With what?
Question. How often do you feel like you have control over the amount and type of info that you're recalling? Are these like huge flashes of memories, or yeah? So what is it like?
Well, it really depends. Because of my mind suppressant that I had after I got out of Section 13 because of the revolt, they ended up suppressing a lot of my memories. And it literally wiped out most of my childhood, including a lot of my schooling. When I started getting my memories back from the projects back then, it was just like some of it was just in spurts. Some of it didn't make sense. I really had to do a lot of meditation. I really had to, when I started talking to certain people, like I have a group that actually remembers me in the projects. And when I start talking, they start remembering, and it can kind of like open up memories really quickly without cold reading, and then some of the memories of missions, it's like I come back, they set me back down in my bed, and I write in my journal as much as possible because the memories can go like that immediately.
Thank you. All right, from Bottega Verati. Apollonie, do you know how to stop telepathy to get mental peace from abuse?
Yes, you have to learn how to mind shield yourself. And it takes a lot of practice because it depends on who is trying to read your thoughts. You have like 5 different forms of brainwaves, and each of them can be tapped into, sometimes simultaneously, and sometimes entities can only tap into your awake and subconscious. So you basically just have to learn how to shield your thoughts, and it is a very long process and takes a lot of time, but it is possible.
Outside Tesseract is asking, why are the people you're working for so rude to you? Shouldn't they be appreciative of what you can do?
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. This is a great question. A lot of people who say that they're in SSP and stuff, they may have been in the military. People like me don't get into the military. We are usually chosen, from what I am, experienced in not only being in, but the group that I am in that actually remembers me. We had no idea, but when they bring us in, they do not treat us like soldiers. They treat us like experiments. They treat us like slaves. Like we're indebted to them the moment that we're born. Now, I was actually created to be an experiment, to be a soldier, and utilized in this fashion. But there's no holds over there. There's no rules of human or animal like rights. Okay, we go in, we do what we have to do and to get trained. And unfortunately, the people that were running the projects were not good people. They did not care. They worked for a lot of the organizations that are trying to rule this country and this world right now in a bad manner. And I'm on YouTube, so I have to be careful what I say. So they have expectations of how to deal with people that they consider slaves or cannon fodder.
I watched Groundhog Day years ago. I can't remember the plot very well, though, except everything keeps repeating and he jumps ahead of it.
For the better terms. And unfortunately, that's just the way they were. Now, when a certain president, who is no longer president, came in, things got a lot better for us. A lot of those people got fired, they got stripped of their rankings and got out of the projects, and we actually had rights. We actually got a lot better treatment and actually treated like civil people versus animals. So, and even though he's not in office anymore, luckily for some of the projects, not all, have remained that way.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So Carrie Ann is asking, do they keep pulling you back now for more missions?
Yes, I am still active for certain projects.
Yeah, and I am too as well. And I think we're going to be stuck in this for a very long time. There's a lot of problems out there.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Somebody's asking, can we see pictures of your clones?
If I had a picture of my clones, that would be awesome because I'm sure some of well, I mean, so people have to understand that clones, all of them do have souls. All right, even though they share a part of your energy signature, it's like twin syndrome almost, and you can get that twin effect too. That's how we link to them. They have another entity's soul in them, but they have all of our DNA for the body, and it can get quite confusing for the soul sometimes.
Well, what about this? Where are your clones? Where are they?
Some of them are in with the projects, which is kind of agitating. I have literally been cloned since I was a kid, so God only knows where some of them are. I have actually met my clones before, and that was a whole new identity crisis and mental fortitude of figuring out who I
haven't. No, I haven't.
Those ones that I had met were basically made for bioweapons. They were made for medical, like medical organs and everything else. They were basically being used for harvesting.
Yeah, so as far as if I was to answer the question, our clones are all over the place. They sell out our DNA to different planetary corporations. One of the things they actually tell my clone on the moon, James Ring, is that that me in the here and now that I'm selling my DNA to planetary corporations to make a bunch of money. So he was all upset, thinking I'm making a bunch of money from this, and I'm making absolutely nothing. So yeah, but in my book, to get a copy of my book on my website, I go into some of the remote views, some of the cloning chambers where they keep us at. Another one was under with the 5 Star Corporation. So that one was the Derek Reinhold stuff. But yeah, you can learn what those cloning labs are like. But let me go here to Thomas is asking a question. By the way, Thomas, thank you for your contribution for this video with the introduction. But Thomas wants to know if you had any communication with any of your alters, and do you have any male alters?
Yeah, I've had some communication with some of my alters.
The movie This Is the End by James Franco, it's a comedy, but it's about the end of the days, earthquakes, demons walking the streets, and they're saying it's a biblical end days in the movie, and obviously they mock, and they even have a false rapture in it. They have a light come down to rescue someone, and if someone's willing to do works like sacrifice himself for someone else, he gets to heaven. So it's even got a false rapture in it. Very, very telling.
There's before. I don't really like myself sometimes. It's very interesting dealing with myself. I mean, I understand that they have different souls in them, even though they're still in my genetics. But it can be a very kind of territorial interaction.
Yeah.
As for male alters, I have had a few, but rarely.
Yeah, I've got one female. I think I actually have 2, but one that I know that they use me. I think a Kruger of Genoa. She is a lesbian, but she's drop dead gorgeous, and she's pretty damn badass. But other than that, I'm gonna keep those memories in a little pocket in my head, so I don't have to deal with them right now. But yeah, that is an issue that does pop up for experiencers that are in these particular projects. Okay, how can you tell who's a hybrid and who's human?
So that's a very interesting question. It really depends. Actually made a test for people to answer certain questions. It's like a 52 questionnaire test. Because when I first started all of my journey of trying to figure out what the heck has been happening to me my entire life, at first I knew I just wasn't human. And it started off that way, of my curiosity of like, there has to be more than just me as being not human. And so I made this test because I have ran into a few other hybrids before, and they smell different. Their pheromone chemistry is different. If you think about it as like for pheromones, if you take a tiger, a lion, a cougar, they're all going to have a similar scent to them because that is their I don't remember there's like a phylum or class. They belong in one tree of the genetic spectrum. And so there's going to be a certain genetic pheromone marker. The same thing is for humans. It doesn't matter wherever they come from the world. And ETs are the same way. They all have certain species scents for pheromones. And when you come across a hybrid, they're going to smell possibly half human and something else. And I've come across, like I said, I've come across a few people like this, and some of them are reptilian, some of them are Pleiadian, some of them are Syrian. I've met an Arcturian, a hybrid Arcturian here before on Earth, like walking around just like everybody else. So their abilities can be different, as in sensitories, so they could have better hearing, better sight, better ESP, empathy, that sort of thing.
So somebody's asking about physical evidence. Do you think you could provide physical evidence?
What physical evidence do you have of your experiences in the Secret Secrets program? I have abduction marks, if that's evidence enough for you. I've got bruises. I had a caretaker for 24/7 for almost a year, and they can tell you that I've been missing in my bed, and there's no way that I can get out of there without them noticing, because their bedroom is like facing the hallway that I have to go down. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't even matter how much evidence we throw out there if someone's skeptical, then they're just not going to believe. And it's okay to be skeptical, but you know, like I said,
I've been getting injection marks almost on a daily basis for nearly 17 years now. I've posted pictures all over the place in old videos. It's also in my book, but it's to the point now I just don't really care anymore. Trying to prove people like then your physical evidence. So let's see here. How about this? How about we pause asking questions? You said you had another experience you wanted to share.
Oh, yeah. So this mission was in April 2nd of 2022. I cannot disclose the location because I am under contract. I can disclose anything past 3 years in full detail. But because of the new contract I have with certain organizations, I can't. Otherwise, I just don't get to go on missions anymore, and that super sucks for me. So this mission was also kind of on a desolate planet. There wasn't really any floral fauna on the side that we were going to. I had 6 members with me. We were basically told that this human establishment was having issues with the local ETs, or what do you call them, terrestrials, the local inhabitants of the planetoid that we were on. And they were coming into their facilities and just messing everything up. So we were going over there to protect this facility and its inhabitants. I'm not allowed to disclose the name of the inhabitants for obvious reasons. And, you know, it's just been kind of scuffles here or there with like maybe 5 or 6 of the inhabitants coming over and causing issues. A couple of the members got killed. So I guess they just hired us to go over and deal with the situation and you know, be like, oh, okay, basically bodyguarding. Well, what was supposed to be an easy bodyguarding ended up turning into a raid. And mind you, there's only 6 of us there. This building is about 5 stories tall. We're talking technology first. It was a scientific building. They had technology for starting to grow plants, technology for hybridization of animals that could live on this planetoid. There was technology for medical advancements over there, technology for the all of the actual technology that they were going to need for like workings of the cars, vehicles, that sort of thing. They're building structures. And at first we only saw like 5 or 10 of these little creatures, and they looked like really kind of dark brown, your typical gray ET body type, but they were brown. They had 4 claws on their hands and the big black eyes, completely bald, slender. You know, and we're like, oh, these guys are really kind of giving you issues. That's kind of weird. They look, you know, I assume that most of these ET types would have, you know, empathy and a lot of ESP abilities, but like most of them do. And what ended up being like 7 to 10 just kind of wandering around, and we were just kind of keeping an eye on them. We ended up getting alarms as some of them have snuck into the building, and we ended up going into the building, and they were everywhere. And I mean, not just like 15, there was like 20, 30 of them, and they kept coming into the building. We had no idea how they got in here. So we are scrambling from the rooftop all the way down to try and figure out where they came from. and trying to eliminate these things. And they proved to be a little bit more of a handful than normal. I don't know what hybrid these guys were, but they actually had sharp pointy teeth and their mouths actually elongated a little bit. Now, most gray ATs that I know of, like their mouths are only like this wide most of the time, but these guys actually went up to like here, which is a little creepy. I'm not gonna lie. We ended up dealing with these guys for the most of it. We got down to the basement level and it looked like they had actually blasted a hole in the basement, but they just kept coming. And we only saw this through the cameras, but they just kept coming in. And then we had another like enforcement group that also started coming in. And I actually have a picture of these little guys. My drawings are terrible without like a lot of work. I apologize. See if I can get this here. So they looked like this. They almost kind of looked like a hybrid of a triceratops type creature and a gray. So like that, this is the face. And then this is like the body type. And their legs are actually a little bit bigger than this. And they can move really fast.
That's not what I wrote.
And they started coming in. And I literally I didn't even know what to do. We got so overran so quickly. The only thing that we could do was literally try and save as many people as possible at this point. And so I started phasing through as many doors as possible, trying to like open them ahead of the people that were running for the scientists and the crew and some of my teammate members. And we got quite a bit of people out of the building. And then we ended up having to take out the floor level of one of the walls to get outside. And we were running halfway around the building and kind of sneaking around because these creatures were so enthralled on trying to get into the building and then just basically destroying it, I guess. But the 6 of us were sneaking around to the side, and the other humans were trying to get to like escape pods that they had outside of the building, and we were trying to escort them off to the side. And I turned around and saw this creature that was really tall. It was like 6 feet, and it was really hard to kind of decipher what was a face and a head and eyes, because it looks, if you wrap someone in like moss and leaves, that's pretty much like the texture of this creature. And they were like kind of just ducking around on this huge boulder and watching this building get raided, and it looked like they were part of its crew. And I got really curious as to what was going on, truthfully. You know, most soldiers just like take orders and do everything else. I have never been, I'm a little unorthodox, let's put it that way. So I actually started going down there to talk to this creature, and my teammates were like, "What are you doing? You're going to get us caught. Don't do this." And I told them to just go get the people to safety. And so I walked down kind of like this gully area to where this creature was hiding behind the boulder, and I didn't have any weapons in my hand or anything like that. I just held my hands up walking towards it. And I asked it, I was like, "What do you guys want? Like, what is your purpose for this raid?" And the creature turned around and telepathically talked to me, and it was like, "You need to stay where you are. Don't come near me too much, you know." And then it actually called for backup, and I was like surrounded by the little, not triceratops ones, but the brown gray AT ones. And I told him, I was like, "Just take me to your superior officer, or take me to who you take orders from." And that didn't really seem to register. And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually going to say this. Would you just take me to your leader, okay?" And they kind of got the reference after a little while of communication barriers. And there was this very interesting entity that ended up walking up towards me. He looked Octarian. All right, this was a very tall entity, very blue-skinned, bald. But the thing that I've met plenty of Octarians out in space. The weird thing for me is this one actually had cybernetics on them, and they had this like chest vest on, basically with this.
Now that you pointed out, I do, but she's got no Adam's apple, so I don't think it's a drag. I think it's a dead set chick.
Like little kind of pack on the end. And it actually had these like tentacle hands.
That might have something to do to their super soldier program, and they're getting built with wider shoulders for the women.
That came out, and they were completely metal, completely made out of metal. And they actually had like a breathing apparatus on that was made out of glass over his head. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is kind of weird. But that one was actually one of their leaders, and I asked him to take me to like their highest leader, and I told my group to just go without me, because I can create the Stargate portals to get back to safety whenever I need to. So they left me, and I ended up getting taken to almost, I'd say, a quarter of a mile to or longer to a base of operations, and their leader was one of the mossy like creatures that I saw, and I talked to him, and it turns out that the human inhabitants was overstepping their bounds on the agreed territory that they could inhabit without seeking the wrath, basically, of these terrestrials, and that they were doing experiments and taking resources that weren't theirs. And so I ended up getting a hold of my group, because we have augments that allow us to do that, and basically settling this whole ordeal with no fighting, basically. It was just a huge miscommunication and people overstepping their bounds, which, is okay. Well, it's not okay, but like, it's okay that the mission ended up not dealing with a whole bunch of blood massacre. So not all of our missions end up with complete blood massacres.
All right, thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing story. So, I guess at the end of the day, did the humans learn their lesson to treat this species with a little bit more respect as equals?
It sounded like by the full end of it that their leaders were willing to talk with the head scientists, or the people who were in charge of the facility, and get everything kind of straightened out. It sounded like the humans were trying to buy off of, oh, well, we didn't know. And I'm like, seriously, this is kind of important if you don't want to wage war.
Yeah. So do you have any information how you actually created those portals, or that portal?
I have been able to do that ever since I was a kid, before I went on before I got kicked out. And that was because they actually started using us as guinea pigs, throwing us through what most people would call the Stargate portals in Area 51, to see what was basically on the other side. They didn't, they didn't care about us, especially if we were using the Avatar program. So they would just push us through, figure out what was on the other side. We basically did surveillance and reported what was on the other side. When I started going through them consecutively, I started to be able to feel the physics that was happening when they, pushed us through. And so one of my abilities is mimicking, and I basically started to learn how to mimic. And it took me a while to learn that my explosions that I could make were actually not too far of a step from actually just making wormholes.
So, as far as going through this Stargate, I'm assuming this is at section 1332C, area 52.
Yes.
So they actually have a Stargate there.
Yes.
Can you describe what that looks like?
So the older Stargates basically were just a ring. That's it. And you didn't have to really type any code or anything like that on the ring itself. I know everyone thinks that the Stargate is the show. I can't watch that show too much. It actually gives me PTSD.
Wow.
I tried. I literally tried. But it's literally just like this silver metal ring that is on the stand. And when they actually activate the Stargate for putting in all the frequencies and coordinates, it basically just, all they use is like a single drop of water. That's it. And then it just basically explodes into this huge disk of water surface of plasma. And then you just walk right through.
Wow.
We have little discs now that are just kind of like octagonal ones where we can just throw down, and those are our relay discs where we just step on them and they will actually take us to our rendezvous points, and then they disintegrate.
Wow.
But in dire needs, I usually can make a Stargate, but it's not foolproof. I've actually jumped parallel universes doing that, which my group was not very thankful for.
When you do the parallel universe jumping, is it hard to come back to the here and now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not entirely fully like 100% for destination. Sometimes I can get it on point and sometimes I can't, just because I haven't been able to practice it as much as I would like to, but you can see why they don't really let me do that a whole lot.
Tell us about a time where you actually went to a parallel universe. What was it? How's it different over there?
So it's almost exactly like the one that you're currently in, except for the year can change, the dates can change. I have jumped literally years behind. So say I was in 2022 and I ended up doing a time jump of either messing up on my my Stargates, or some other weird event has happened where I ended up time jumping. I've literally jumped back to 2020 before. From 2022 to 2020, I've had to live all of that all over again. And some events change and some events don't change. The biggest change that I had last time that I jumped, Trump got back in office, World War III didn't happen, and this time around, none of that happened. So it's kind of freaking me out a little bit because I'm like, can I go back into the other one? Like, it was a lot better.
So you're saying this timeline was supposed to have World War III?
The other timeline I was in was on the brink of World War III, but that World War III almost started in April. And Trump got back into office and literally it all just dropped overnight completely. And then Atlantis showed up almost a few weeks later. So like Atlantis actually merged up again a few weeks later. And then a couple weeks after that, I ended up time jumping, which I was
Okay. Oh, wow.
Wait a minute, hold on a second. You said Atlantis came up from the sea?
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually on the news stations.
What was it like the continent under the ocean rose up and there was ancient ruins, or was another alternate reality blended in?
No. So Atlantis Citadel, the city got destroyed, and when it actually went under the sea is technically when the sea levels rose during the floods. The Citadel came back up, and it actually surfaced somewhere in the Atlantic. But
okay, we now know that Atlantis is in the Sahara Desert. It's the eye of the Sahara. So what's she on about?
that thing can move around on its own
Are
volition.
you familiar with the term Ashland?
Ashland? Mm-mm.
Ashland is the name of at least one of the biodomes on the bottom of the sea right now. There's approximately 300 million people that live down there. The Navy's been trying to penetrate the structure to get in there. But there's Atlantis. Some of those people down there are over 100,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Between 7 to 9 foot tall. So, and they're not very friendly towards surface dwellers.
I can't blame you.
Well, in the future, maybe there can be some kind of dialogue that we can, our group, our races can mutually cooperate. But that's interesting. So back in April, there was a report by the Guardians of the Looking Glass that there would be a false FLAG and new NYC Times Square that would kill about 4,000 people. And on that same day, I think it was like April 20th or something, there was a bunch of signs, "We stand with Ukraine," all over the place in Times Square. And I'm thinking, well, because they were going to blame it on Russia, and that would have been, so when that would have happened, the next event would have been an anthrax scare in DC, which killed 4 million people, and then the cabal retaliated against Russia, and then at that point, Russia has technology to shoot all the nukes out of the sky, and they retaliated by leveling about 50 million people in the United States. Another 10 million died from starvation, and then months after that, it was an absolute disaster. So I'm glad that timeline has not happened, but now it's almost like CERN has changed everything. Nobody really knows where we're headed. Where do you think we're headed? Actually, that's one of the questions here.
Wow, he's asking about CERN. This will be interesting.
The potential future.
Oh my gosh, like it's so diverse. I don't even know anymore. I thought I knew. I used to have Future Sight really well, but that all changed in like 2016. So honestly, with me time jumping so much and parallel universe hopping so much, I have no clue. I really cannot tell you. Like it's starting to freak me out, to be honest.
Yeah,
I used to make Future Sight a lot usually.
Okay. Well, how about we go back to the Stargate? Can you tell us how wide it actually was, or how big the event aperture was?
Let's see here. I'm trying to remember. You can at least like it would be at least like I would say if you're going to, so if it's a circle and you're just going through the full circumference, maybe 10 to 12 people wide. It's not like one of the huge ones.
All right. Next question. On these other worlds that these Stargates are connected to, I mean, potentiality, there could be viruses or toxins or germs or whatnot that could infect you, and then when you come back, it could potentially kill everyone on the planet. So how do they get around all that when you're doing this type of travel?
So we usually get cleansed when we get to base after they pick us up from our beds. We get cleansed on base, and then we get cleansed when we get into our suits before we go on our missions, and then after our missions, we go right back to the not med beds, but back to medical facilities after being cleansed. The medical facilities, and then they basically scan us and diagnose us if we have anything, and then they treat us after that.
Well, did anybody ever get really sick?
Yeah, actually, one of my last missions, which I'm sure we'll do in another one, I actually got infected with a parasite. And I ended up infecting about 14 other crew members before we even got back to the main base.
So I guess the moral story is don't eat any of the food over there?
No, I actually got infected by an entity on my mission. I ended up in a fight with it and lost. Because I do not win all the time.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think Jimmy Payne, he's commented that he went onto the moon. I think this was like in one of the Apollo missions, but he launched out from Area 51 on one of the saucer craft to observe the Apollo missions with this gray called Sweetie. And when he was walking, even though he had a spacesuit on, there were worms in the soil that got into his suit, and he had to get chemotherapy because these worms were so difficult to kill off. Yeah, that going to kill them with chemo.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I guess that's pretty much all the. I mean, oh, how about this? What was it like actually crossing through the Stargate? Did you see like a long tunnel, or was it like instantaneous? Like you're here and then you're there?
So when you actually cross through the Stargate, it's basically light speed traveling also. So you see a lot of prismatic light coming around in circles. And then it's really kind of weird. I wish I had that toy that represents like what an actual Stargate actually is. It's like a balloon toy, but it's like you can put your fingers in it and it still like wraps around your fingers. And then if you do this, it is like a continuous tube. I'm gonna have to find one. It's just easier to explain. But you basically see a lot of prismatic light. You feel like you don't have really too much of gravity because your gravity is completely like almost non-existent as you're being like, it's like the sucking motion and then a pushing motion halfway through. It's very bizarre and it's very disorienting. You usually throw up if you're not used to it after a while. And it can take you a little bit to get your ground on the other side. And just hope that you never, ever, ever, ever cross the stream.
What's that?
Can you tell us how far into the future you've been to?
The furthest into the future that I remember, but I don't have a whole lot of memories. Wow. I don't have a whole lot of memories because I'm still trying to unlock them, was like 2035, I believe.
We right there.
Okay, we're dying to know what was it like there. Was it on this planet?
Okay, I might say this, guys. We're not going to be here in 2033. So, oh man, what have we else got lined up? Hang on, guys. I'll play it on something now. Hang on. I'll just play this for a sec. Let me look.
Revelation chapter 21. Revelation chapter 21. Boy, we're almost done. I got one more chapter to go. Not next week, but the next week, because I'll be gone. But I'm looking forward to this week. And somebody said, are you just going to do 21 and 22 together? And I was like, obviously you don't know me. It takes a while to at least get through the whole chapter. And so I think the last one will be chapter 22, and we'll do that in one class. So today we're going to be looking at Revelation chapter 21. And a lot of this is about New Jerusalem. And I'm looking forward to talking about New Jerusalem. This is awesome. Now, what has already happened? Well, we saw this, the Battle of Armageddon. And we saw who? We saw Satan coming down here. And so Satan went down here for 1,000 years, right? And then God lets him come out at the end of that 1,000 years. So the devil, the Antichrist, all those people. So this is the millennial kingdom of 1,000 years. And then God destroys the devil. And then God starts eternity. And he destroys the earth and makes a new heaven and a new earth. So this is GWTJ, Great White Throne of Judgment. Okay? Remember, our judgment is here, the judgment seat of Christ. That's when we're, who saved, are judged. And we're not judged for our sins, because they've already been judged. We're judged for our service. Over here is where sins were judged on Calvary. So thank God, when I sing that song, My Sins Are Gone, guess what? My sins are gone. I don't have to face my sins before God because they're under the blood. But in this life, I might have to face my sins. The Bible says you reap what you sow here in the flesh. So my soul...
Okay, I found something, guys. Jigsaw puzzle of history, Steve Quayle and Tom Horn.
That we're seeing this division now that's happening, where you have those who are saying, don't listen to those prophets of doom. Come over here and let's all sing Kumbaya, because this was the way it was at the time of Christ. This is the way it's prophesied to be at the end of time. It's actually a tribulation period, in which the man of sin is going to behead those.
It's 1 year old, guys.
Who will not worship him. The beast, the false prophet, is going to cause the organized church to give power unto his image, to bow down before him. So that's exactly what's happening. I'm glad you opened the show by bringing that up, Steve. I don't ever tell people this is my best work ever. But
Yeah, Barry, sometimes they're really good, but she said a few things wrong and I just didn't like it.
But
I do believe there's a secret space program. I do believe they got all that technology. I do believe that.
If I'm working on a book project like this one right now, Unearthing the Lost World, The Cloud Eaters, the documentary film, if I'm doing it, it's because I'm into it. But I had some rare opportunities that are outlined in that book, and we're not talking about that tonight, so I won't roll. Maybe we come back and do a different show on it. But I had real opportunities. I mean, I went back to the house of the temple. We got beneath the surface, but I'm going back right after the conference, Steve. I'm going back to Washington, D.C. I'm going to be meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis at the Pentagon, where I'm going to be introduced to some different people there. But there's a whole lot that's going to come out in this, and let's just say that it makes Pizzagate look like a 12-year-old birthday party. So, and maybe we'll talk about that too. But now let's talk about, how did I get started this whole unearthing the lost world of the Cloud Eaters? You have this groundbreaking book, the first book ever by me and Steve Quayle together. That's one surprise to a lot of people since we've been doing radio since the shortwave radio days. Everybody thinks that we've done a dozen books together. We haven't. This is actually the very first time. And then there's the documentary film from Gen 6 Productions, which is, again, setting the bar on how fine Christian filmmaking ought to be made. And then there's the conference, and the conference is almost sold out right now. I talked to the guy that's helping us with this here just a couple of days ago at Steve's conference. I'm just there, and I'm going to be part of it. I'm going to speak. But there's only a limit of just under 3,000 seats. And almost every one of them is sold already. It's going to be sold by the time we get there. So if people are listening to this program tonight and they want to be there in person, man, they need to run right now to the website.
Hey, Tom, I need to interrupt you. There is no more space because we've got to abide by it, so there are only positions 370 left for live streaming.
Oh, I got you. So there's only 370 left for live streaming. Wow. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So people need to do that. So there's going to be right at 3,000 of us that are going to be at the what do they call the place where we're going to?
The mansion.
Yeah, the Branson Mansion. Big, beautiful, gorgeous performance theater. This is where the Oak Ridge Boys do like 25 concerts a year and a whole bunch of other really well-known group. So gigantic stage with all the lights. I'm just hoping Steve can use some of those lights to make me look pretty. But big, huge place, and it's just packed to the walls. Then every seat in it is sold, and then people around the world are going to be watching the live stream. Well, if there's only 300 or whatever you just said left, they need to do that. You're going to be there, Steve. I'm going to be there. L.A. Marzulli, who's going to be there presenting. Of course, Timothy Alberino. Dr. Michael Lake is going to be there. You mentioned Pastor Langford earlier. Derek Gilbert, the host of Skywatch Television, is going to be there. Anselm Pirambla. I mean, I'm really looking forward. This guy is a legendary European adventurer. And I think he's going to be bringing, I've heard some stuff behind the scenes. Maybe I shouldn't even mention it and not give it up. But he's going to be bringing some stuff on maybe the Vatican and some of his work there. But yeah, nothing like this before. And by the way, if you limit conferences in the United States just to prophecy-themed conferences, there's no other conference in the nation that even comes close to how well this has sold out, Steve. So kudos to you. It does show that in spite of the fact that you're being listed, by some of these fake news, hate groups, washed up, right-wing watch, whatever they're called, news agencies, that
I bet my memories are left hidden.
The majority of people out there that times are very much interested in and want to know. They want to know. They want to know the facts of what has happened, is happening, is coming, but also what can they do about it. If they want to be empowered to know what actions they can take. And of course, I know that Pastor Langford and some of the Henry Gruber will be able to also give them the biblical equipment to be able to deal with what is coming upon the earth, so that they too will not have hearts failing them for fear, right?
Exactly, and I think to everyone that's listening, this is a time of equipping of the saints. Tom and I and
It's 1 year old.
Clay Marzulli and Anselm P. Rambla and Derek Gilbert, and Derek will be moderating our roundtable, Tom, between you and I and Tim. And, we'll try and cover the most prescient information and the most commonly asked questions. But going through this whole, if you will, over and over in my head, I think this thing has been so orchestrated by the living God. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we could not have arranged in South America what came out. And those of you that were there with us on the True Legends expedition were blown away too, because you watched a very high-ranking, quote, Vatican officials lie to your faces and tell you that Father Gamarra, by the way, Tom, was the guy that gave Anselm P. Rambla the permission to excavate in the Coricancha into the Shinkana, the underground tunnel system that basically everybody knew existed, but the official position of the church is there is no such thing. And why this is important is because Anselm, this guy's been all over the world, one of the most famous explorers in the world, and some of the most striking adventures and good night, the exposure of so much hidden archaeology and real archaeology. There was an attempt, even while we were there, they said that Father Gamarra was not on the premises, and lo and behold, he literally shows up in the courtyard. We got him on film stating, and he called Anselm P, like Pi is his middle initial and name, and he acknowledged and said on camera, yes, it's all true. Even when we got the guys in their multi-$1,000 suits, their mics, their headphones, people flipping out, trying to deny it, trying to basically say you can't film, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I love it. I called it God's sense of humor, because they were telling us that we can't do this, we can't do that, and in walks the man that can validate it all. But what we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to bring you 6 different viewpoints of not overlapping investigation, but unique. And see, this is kind of like the temple that was built in the wilderness. Everything has been built separately, and now God himself is bringing the pieces of the puzzle together. And, I've quoted Newton's statement that at the time of the end, God's going to raise up a group of men who are going to be given to prophecy, but it's going to be amongst much clamor and opposition. Tom, you quoted the scripture that there'll be coming a time when men will kill us, claiming they're doing God a favor. I already see the lines being drawn. I believe this Charisma article, and I will answer that woman, is the first shot or salvo. If Jesus himself said, just as in the days of Noah, you've got to understand, we live in George Orwell's prophetic written world now, and he made the statement, they who control the past determine the future. I believe that by the time you've listened to Derek Gilbert talking about Inception, you've listened to Dr. Dr. Michael Lake. I'm just trying to keep the order in my head. He did the most marvelous job on Doug, your show last week. He was exquisite. So when you hear all these guys, L.A., Timothy Alberino, who's got this stuff dialed in like nobody's tomorrow, and plus he's half my age, Tom. The thing is that that's important, because the young people
now the kangaroos are in Spandau.
have got to grow up in the things of God. Turn off their video games, turn off the devil vision, and begin to seek the truth, of God's word. And, I'm concerned, Doug, for the generation now that is right behind ours. I guess they'd almost be now our grandchildren's age coming up, is that fact that they know not God. The hunger for things of God, it's dying out. The the love of many is waxing cold. The salt has lost its savor. And, you know, you can go on wanting to make happy talk in Charisma Magazine, and that's even a misnamed magazine if they're taking that position, because the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. If Jesus didn't think the days of Noah were important, and just as Tom listed Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 10 or 11, and all the prophecies of Daniel, all the prophecies of Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Amos, Haggai, Hosea, Zechariah. These are not in order, by the way. I'm just saying this. And the greatest prophet of all is Jesus. And if people will not listen to that, and you know, I understand now where basically there has been a gospel ignorance that has resulted in the divorce from those who claim to know Jesus as Lord and Savior to not even believing that anymore, claiming Jesus is a metaphor of good, the devil's a metaphor of evil, and that Jesus just came along to help us live better lives. That's horse manure. Without the blood of Jesus, there is no redemption. So why is this situation in Branson so important? I can tell you this, that when men of God like Henry and David Langford are praying and fasting, calling on God to make and to move amongst the people of God, something's going to happen. And I mean that for a good state. We're going to give you the background. And, some people say, well, it's so scary. No, it's not scary. Your primary weapon in overcoming fear is knowing what is coming on the horizon. Why do you think people go to fortune tellers and read chicken entrails, or basically, do horoscopes, or do all the things, or, do human sacrifice? They want to know what the future holds. And so just as they who control the past determine the future, they're doing everything they can to try and get in to the space-time continuum and to change history. Well, I got news for you. The God of heaven allows them only to go so far. So when people...
No, but there is kangaroos in the bushes about 10 miles away, Diane. If you go to Newcastle, you'll see roadkill of kangaroos.
Will tell you time is speeding up. It literally is speeding up because it's a biblical statement for the elect's sake. And, the idea simply is this. In Branson, you'll be presented with, I would say, 6 very, very determined and I would say highly researched efforts of everyone that has even been invited to that. And it's not that we think that we know everything or that nobody knows anything else. And I've had people suggest that because they're not invited. I say, look, this thing came together fast. This is who the Lord laid on my heart. And I never met Dr. Michael Wake. I just recently met L.A. Marzulli in Peru. And obviously I know Derek from his interviews. And I actually coined a term, Tom. I don't know if you know this, but I now have a new word. It's called Encyclopedia Gilbertica.
I know, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think there's somebody that can do a better interview than Derek. That's not flattery. That's not, anything other than that. So the purpose of all of this at Branson, and then for you to take it forth from that, is to get you trained. Because I'm telling you this, when what continues to happen, it's already happening in Houston. And if you haven't noticed, ladies and gentlemen, the entire red state area along the Gulf Coast, now going up the East Coast, isn't it interesting? It sure isn't hitting California, and it sure isn't hitting the liberal, if you will, I call it hellhole states. What it's hitting is the red states. And so we're talking about gasoline. Tom, I posted I think an alert yesterday in my alert section and told everybody gas was going to dry up and then it's going to be food. People don't understand Houston is not only one of the biggest ports in the United States, 3rd largest city, but it feeds, it literally, and no pun on the word, but it provides food and all the goods, the entire East Coast going up into the central plains of the United States. So it's already in the land. The famine is coming. And if you think $8 to $10 a gas for gasoline, which is now being seen in Dallas, wait until you see $10 for a can of soup, chunky bee soup, $10. You think that's so far-fetched? You watch it. You see, I've come to the point, and I've said this, Doug, I've said this, Tom, but people don't don't want to know the truth because, quote, it scares them. It's not that it scares them primarily. It's that it demands action on their part. How many people stayed in Houston seeing the horrific satellite pictures because they listened to the words of a man who obviously now in retrospect has lost all credibility, the mayor, and this is the same thing over and over and over. I posted another alert, and it's all based on prophecy by my friend, and she's a former DHS, FEMA, emergency management person, telling that they knew about this hurricane months ago, and that the whole thing is the moving of entire populations out of areas into control zones. I know her. She is who she says she is. So how is this important to what we're talking about tonight? I know Tom Horn very well. We've spent a lot of time, a lot of years on talk radio. I think a room in their home is devoted to Steve. I've been out there so many times.
And I hate the stupid words he invents. I'm not big on Steve Quayle. I'm really listening for Tom Horn. Because you're right, Steve Quayle, he never actually says anything, does he?
Thank you, and Nita, for your lovely hospitality. But the point is that we're doing what God has called us to do. And Tom, go ahead and share how you got into this, because I think, the Bible says, know them that labor amongst you. And I don't think people understand that, the amount of background, blessing, movement, disappointments, discouragements, everything that God does to bring a person, a man or a woman, to the point where he can use them. And as you said, you thought you would retire. So share your story, because I think it's pretty amazing.
Well, and so one final thing, because you keep firing up my motor here. People need to know that, again, it's Bible prophecy that the day is coming when it says the Antichrist is going to be given power to make war against the saints and to overcome them. So that's the reason that we don't try to put, sugar on every cake we serve. That if we are truly moving into a prophetic era of time, people like you and I would have said, get out of your houses, move now. How heartbreaking was it, Stephen? You recall this, by the way, when Fukushima first happened. All of us, you sell emergency supplies, I sell emergency supplies, and we were all sold out in one day. The rest of the year, you're sitting there, you've got all these supplies, the warehouses are full, people can get potassium iodide, they can get nuke detectors, they can get all this stuff, gas masks, they get long-term storage food, water purification systems, they can get all this stuff. It's just sitting there ready, right? It's not even all that expensive, but they just don't do it. And then all of a sudden you have a Fukushima, and we've got stuff that's coming that's going to put Fukushima to shame. Now everybody's clamoring, well, we sold out in one day. In one day, we were out of everything. And we had backlogged orders for 6 months. In fact, we had to just start giving people's money back. We had to just start saying, we can't take orders. Remember, Mountain House Foods shut down their website. Viral Safe Potassium Iodide shut down their website. They just said, sorry, folks, there's nothing. You're on your own. Well, that is why people should do what you said a moment ago, Steve. When they can, as they have the opportunity, to whatever extent they can, they ought to prepare, not just for, obviously, the kind of terrible circumstances that we're seeing right now in Texas, but this other stuff, the coming of Antichrist, this is going to be a whole different new kind of level, and people need to be ready. So anyway, all right, I know we're not here to talk about that today, and the whole truth is, how I got started really is, how did I get started on this subject matter? How did we wind up in the Four Corners area? It seems like that's been a couple of years ago to me now, but it wasn't. It wasn't even a year ago. And here's me, you, Timothy Alberino, the whole Skywatch television team, the Defender Publishing team, your group. You're flying in this big helicopter into the Valley of the Gods. How did we wind up in that place, and what were we doing there? Now, that's part of what this conference is going to be about, but it really goes to some much deeper questions, not just the bones of the giants. That's part of it. That's important. That's part of American history, and that also tells us a whole lot that dates back to the Watchers who descended in the days of Jared, what they were doing what Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah. You quoted that a moment ago, what they intend to do in the future. But it isn't just them, it's their devotees. How many people realize that in Washington, D.C. today, there are people who are making concerted efforts to try to bring about the revival of the spirit of the Watchers, the Nephilim, the king of the giants that the book of Revelation says is found in the bottomless pit for the time being. This is stuff that puts Hollywood to shame. They can't make films. They can't make movies that are as exotic and frankly terrifying as what the future of the world is set to behold. And this is why people are going to be frozen in their tracks and, frankly, be susceptible to the lies of Antichrist and to the lies of the anti-church that are those ones that are going to cast their lot for the destruction of believers who otherwise are giving them the truth, and that's why they need to get the truth now. So now for me, how did I get started into all this? I'm not going to go into all this stuff about me and Chris Putnam, but if people listening to this program are not aware of how I got into this line of thought and then began to appreciate the importance of it. I'm speaking at the Strategic Perspectives Conference for our good friend Chuck Misler about 5 years ago now, probably. My son and I, we're standing in the back room, and we're talking about how weird it is that you have this 900-year-old Catholic prophecy, and no matter what you make of it, you believe it, you don't believe it, you think it was all a big hoax, doesn't matter. It had historical importance because it's a 900-year-old Catholic prophecy that certainly was held in high esteem by even some of the popes. And my son and I, Joe Artist, we're talking about that. We're saying, isn't it weird that there's only 112 lines, and Pope number 111, Pope Benedict XVI, is the Pope right now. But if he dies or if he steps aside, the very next guy.
Okay, this is years old, but it's only been uploaded a year ago on Illuminati Others.
Is going to be the final one in this prophecy. And nobody has written a thorough examination of this prophecy of the popes. And so I'm a publisher, so I'm always thinking about, the types of things that should be published. And Joe started really encouraging me.
Hang on, guys, I'm just loading this to watch later on. Yeah.
Encouraging me, Dad, you're a publisher, you really ought to put together an outline and write something on this. And this is how preternatural all this began, and literally supernatural events began clicking off one after the other. It's at that moment I go up to my hotel room because I'm waiting on my opportunity to speak. Somebody like Joel Richardson or somebody was up there speaking, and I went up to my hotel room to send myself an email with the note ideas that me and Joe had talked about the prophecy of the popes and why I should publish a book about it. And I open up my email account, and I have an email from a guy that I've never met before, and I've only ever even just barely heard. I knew he had a blog or something. I wasn't even sure about it. But I had an email from this guy named Chris Putnam, and he wanted to know if he could use the only paragraph that I had ever written, and I had written it all the way back in 2009, so 8 years ago. One paragraph, all I ever wrote, where I said, the people with the year 2012 fascination, the Maya, and all that. Wouldn't it be interesting if the prophecy of the Pope also kind of unrolled at the same time? And but I got this email from Chris Putnam, and he wants to know, hey Tom, my name's Chris Putnam. I'm in Bible college. I'm writing a term paper. Can I use the paragraph in my term paper that you wrote? Whenever I wrote it, and I emailed him back and I said, Chris, you can't believe the timing of your inquiry. I said, I was just now talking to my son about the prophecy of the Pope, which I haven't even thought about in years. And I was getting ready to produce an outline. Anyway, I don't want to give it to you blow by blow, but a long story short, a whole series of events put me and Chris Putnam together. We decided to write that book together. During our investigation, we had our own reasons why we came to believe that Pope Benedict XVI was going to step down. We published this. We're on TV talking about it. You can look up the YouTube where a year before the event. We said we believe that Pope Benedict XVI is going to retire. He's going to cite health reasons for doing it to open the door for the arrival of the final Pope and the final Pope prophecy, Pope number 112. And furthermore, we went out on a limb. We said we think this is going to happen in April of 2012. Well, when April of 2012 came and went, it didn't appear that Benedict was going to retire. We thought, well, we missed the date, but we still think the book's valid. But then February 28th, 2013, Benedict announces his resignation as Pope. And that very same day, the news outlet for the Vatican, the El Observatorio Romano, they gave an interview to the New York Times. You can still Google this and read it, in which they admitted that Pope Francis had secretly retired. April 2012, months earlier, he had done it privately after he returned from a trip in March of 2012. He had done it privately with the Courier, because if you recall, at that time was the whole WikiLeaks, what were they calling it? The VatiLeaks scandal, where they were releasing different documents being stolen out of the Pope's office and all that. So they were very careful about it. And so we had got the month and the year correct. Now, it is true that Chris and I both had some Vatican, I wouldn't even say they're Vatican insiders. They were conservative cardinals, the two of them. Very conservative. These guys, by the way, do not like Pope Francis, I'll tell you that. And they gave us a little bit of information, but a lot of the other part of it was just Hagman level, get down in the dirt, investigation, go through thousands of pages of documentation, and we finally came up with that conclusion. Well, anyway, when we got that date right, man, my phone was ringing off the hook. We had people everywhere that was wanting us. We had people that even wanted us to go to Rome, but we were warned not to do it, so we didn't go to Rome. But the movie, The Final Pope, was made about it, just a whole lot of stuff, right, because we got that date correct. But here's the thing. I'm saying all that to say this. I want to bring it to the Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloud Eaters. And what put me on this path was, Putnam then and I were out there doing all these programs, right? Television, radio, and wherever there was opportunity for people to call in and ask questions, we were surprised that more often than not, they weren't asking us about the prophecy of the Pope. They were intrigued with that, but what they were asking us was, what do you make of the Vatican being out there now, talking so much about extraterrestrial intelligence and saying that they would baptize aliens? Do you remember that? Because it was around 2009 that the Vatican hosted this astrobiology study week. So around the same time that we're working on this book and we're out there talking, they had hosted this astrobiology study week, and it was really strange because they called together leaders from academia, geologists, nuclear physicists, quantum physicists. I don't even think they were using the term astrobiology in 2009, but that's what they would be today. People that study deep space with the question of, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence study. They called all these people together from around the world, and they only had one question: come to Rome, because we want to discourse for a week of study on one question, and it was this. And people can Google this. I know it sounds fantastic, but it's true. The one question: what is the impact on faith and religion going to be, given the disclosure or the discovery of advanced extraterrestrial intelligence? It was only 90 days later that the oldest scientific body in the world, the Royal Society, they come together. They too convene all these people from around the world, including theologians, and ask the very same question. This is the 350th year anniversary, the oldest scientific body on Earth. You've got the Queen, I forget what he's even called, but he's the Astronomer Royal. You've got all these people there, and they're asking this question: what is the impact on faith going to be? So, all around the world now, suddenly everybody's asking this question. They're calling into the shows Chris and I are doing. They're contacting the Vatican, and the Vatican so sends out these two primary astronomers for the church: Jose Gabel Funes, who at that time was the head of the Vatican Vatican Observatory Research Group, and Guy Consolmagno, who was the Pope's personal astronomer and the keeper of their asteroid fragment collection, but who today is the head of the Vatican Observatory Research Group. And for the last year, by the way, guess what? He's been on a tour going around the world. He wrote a book, and he's doing these big lectures at universities. And guess what the name of the lecture is? Would you baptize an alien? And so this whole conversation got out there. But here's what was weird about this. They started talking about, would you baptize an alien? And Pope Benedict said he would. You notice that Pope Francis, as soon as he was elected, said that if the little green man land on the White House lawn tomorrow, he would baptize an alien. So they started talking about that kind of stuff. But then they started ratcheting it up. They started changing little by little. It's very subtle how they kind of introduce people to the idea and what's in philosophy, what's called the Fabian process of gradualism. They very slowly take people from one line of thinking, get you comfortable with it, then they take you to another line of thinking, then or the Hegelian dialect. They take you to a different line of thinking until eventually you'll accept something that in the beginning you wouldn't even imagine you would have believed. So they're saying, yeah, I mean, we're just talking theoretically. The Vatican's had problems in the past persecuting scientists, so we want to get out ahead of all this and just say that with all these exo worlds that are being discovered, that if we detect alien intelligence, that we would be willing to baptize them in the Catholic faith. Then, a few months later, they ratcheted it up to a different place. And Jose Funes comes out and he gives this interview, and he says, now, people have asked, would the detection of extraterrestrial intelligence, would this challenge the authority of the Roman Catholic Church? And he said, no, it would not, because these would be our space brothers, because if they're part of creation, then the God that we serve created them. Then, a couple months later, he ratchets it up a little further, and he says, not only would it not be against the faith to believe in extraterrestrial intelligence, but he said the fact is the heresy would be if you don't believe in extraterrestrial intelligence, because that would be to put limits on God's creative ability. And I know we're going to hit a break here in a minute, so let me just give you a couple more. They then ratcheted up, and a process of this 1 year, they ratcheted up even further, and they start saying now, if we come into contact with the extraterrestrials, it might not be us baptizing them after all. Why? Because what we know about ourselves is that we are fallen, but we couldn't naturally assume necessarily that the aliens are fallen, and if they're unfallen, then they're closer to God than we are, and they have a better understanding of the Godhead and of the gospel and everything else. Then they ratcheted it up to a completely different place and even wrote a paper, an Opus Dei level paper, that's still being evaluated in Rome, being considered as official doctrine for the Pope's University, in which they went so far as to say, when the aliens come here, we're not going to be baptizing them. They're going to be baptizing us into their faith. And frankly, we might have to rewrite, reconsider everything we've ever thought we knew. This is what they're working on right now. If they say if information from an extraterrestrial source would challenge what we think we know about the gospel, and if it could be verified, I don't know how you verify this, right? But if it can be verified as being legitimate, then we may have to rethink and rewrite everything we've ever thought we knew about the gospel. So when we come back from the break, I can tell you then how that kind of discussion led me and Chris Putnam to going to the top of Mount Graham, and how ultimately that led all of us, me, Steve, all of us, to the Four Corners area and the fantastic discoveries that we made there.
In Branson, I'm going to be covering the pre-Adamic angelic civilization, which all myths, legends, and all of the oral traditions speak about the Golden Age. Then I'm moving into Mars. And Mars is really important because I'm dealing with astrocatastrophism. And astrocatastrophism is something that goes beyond Immanuel Velikovsky's Worlds in Collision. Most people can't even understand that the heavens, that people on Earth were terrified by the cataclysms they had seen. The orbital physics that we now see when we see the picture of the universe aren't the same that existed 700 years before Jesus was born. And so, and by the way, I don't buy BCV and all that stuff, you know. I say before the birth of Jesus and
Okay,
after
Talia,
the
God
resurrection
bless.
of Jesus.
Good
I
night.
don't mean to be difficult, but I refuse to allow them to control the narrative. So what I'll be presenting, Tom, is I put together a pretty amazing, actually J.D. Hopwood did the editing of this and stuff, but he followed my chapter that came right out of, guess where? The Cloud Eaters. So Cloud Eaters, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, are the Native Americans term for, and you guessed it, giants that are returning. So when people say to me, how did you get started? Genesis, the book of Genesis, so was opened up to me by I would say, the mercy of God. I was so stupid, Doug. I couldn't believe in anything when I first got saved until two people came and laid their hands on me from a Bible school saying God sent them. People can, you know, argue with that all the time. And they do argue with me. But look, I went from the guttermost to the uttermost with zero knowledge of anything to a passion to learn the Word of God and listen to all the great teachers of their day and my day and those days. I mean, these were guys that were, you know, just magnificent teachers of the Word of God. Derek Prince and Leonard Ravenhill and all the different people. And I mean, Bob Mumford, great sense of humor, Charles Simpson. I mean, the who's who that God was using to teach his people.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, what's interesting is that book was on my mind too, because we have a whole chapter in there where we were saying, look, a lot of people are saying microchip technology is not going to be the technology that's going to be used for biometric identification, embedded chips, that is, for biometric identification. And we also talked about a lot of other ways in which people could be identified to fulfill the book of Revelation, you know, that no man might buy or sell save he that hath the mark of the name of the beast or the number of the name. But, you know, even against what was kind of popular thinking at the time, we said we still think there could be a way that this was going to happen. And what are we seeing right now across the nation? You know, companies, businesses, people are being voluntarily microchipped, and now some of the banking industry talking about how this could be like the next wave and how buying and selling is going to happen. So, yeah, we're going to wait to see. But, you know, the last time I was on Hagman, we talked about how the University of London, and I'm glad that Steve is going to be talking about this whole subject around transhumanism and connecting the dots between that and what we discovered in Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloud Eaters, the subject of transhumanism, because it's really the same sin being repeated again. Where you have very powerful geneticists in the Old Testament. They're called watchers. They come down, they use the genetic makeup of women, combine that with animals, make these exotic bodies. That's how the giants arrived on the earth. So genetics is a key figure of this. But the University of London, pigeonholing me and Steve Quayle in what they call the milieu. Remember we talked about that on the last program? And that they are saying that we are the leaders of the transhumanist resistance. Yeah. And so I got news for them. Yeah, I got news for them. After the first of the year, we're going to publish a book called The Milieu, Welcome to the Resistance. And we're going to talk about all the reasons why we think there is good that will come out of biotechnology. I saw an article today on how nanotech destroys cancer within something like 60 seconds. There could be some good things that come out of it, and Christians would not be opposed to good therapeutical uses of technology, but we also know that it's kind of a tricky little ethic landmine, and that the good things are also going to be used to justify altering that God created in His image. But anyway, and I should also say, I always do something with the Hagmans that I don't do with anybody else. So anybody listening to this program tonight, if you want in the skywatchtvstore.com, there is the Unearthing the Lost World of the Cloud Eaters book and Steve Quayle's DVD. There's a combo in there for that. It's actually, we put the book and the DVD together and then actually reduced the price and then added a whole bunch of free stuff, free books and audio sets and all this stuff with it that we're giving away. And then you can also just get the book in there by itself. But if you do either one, if you don't have the book and you want it, or you want the DVD movie, go to skywatchtvstore.com and when you click on it to order it, on checkout, put in the promo code Hagman. We always do this with Hagman. We don't do this with anybody else. We only do it with Hagman. Type in there Hagman in the promo code, and we're going to send you the last DVD ever produced by Chris Putnam, which is on the Vatican extraterrestrial connection. Fabulous DVD, very educational. We're going to give it to you, that too, for free, in addition to everything else. And then we're also going to give you the deluxe hardback copy of the Ancient Book of Enoch. You can't get this from anybody else but us. We're going to give that to you for free too, if you go there and you buy either the combination of me and the book and the DVD, or even just buy the book by itself. But make sure you type in Hagman on checkout, and we're going to make sure that that gets sent to you. So it's a whole bunch of free stuff. If you want, if you're going to buy the book, you might as well get the free.
Well, and are you turning it over to me now?
Yes, sir.
This is Steve.
Yes,
Oh,
Steve.
okay, I'm sorry, Doug. I didn't want to interrupt Tom. I think that one of the things that will be very useful to everyone is that there'll probably be 12 to 14 hours of DVDs available. So for those of you that can't get to the conference, you're traveling, whatever, can't even go on live streaming, there's no limit to the amount of DVDs. Now, I've asked Gordon, the guy that's running this thing, McDonald, who, by the way, ran all of Chuck Missler's conferences for 20 plus years, to have these DVDs available almost ASAP. So the minute that, we've got a master, they go out, and we're going to do our best to get these out immediately. Now, for those of you around the world, you still got, there's still 330 spots of live streaming. My guess is by tomorrow that will be down to 280. And where this is going to be a different conference. This is a conference of impartation. Now, I don't go to conferences, and trust me, it was Tom's prodding, and in a good way, and others saying, this might be something, that you want to look at. And finally, I got peace, because as most people know, I don't do conferences. That's not saying whoopee, but it's just because, usually there are too many speakers, and I don't believe that, it serves a purpose when you get too many speakers. Now, saying that, the thing is that the focus on this is, I would say, history's jigsaw puzzle. Because unless you understand the root of evil, you can't deal with the fruit of evil. Unless you understand why aliens cannot be baptized, first and foremost, they're not creating the image and likeness of God. Unless you understand transhumanism is to do away with the very seed that God created when he brought forth Adam and Eve and all of their children. When he basically hid Noah and 8 souls in the ark, they were the only pure genetic stock. And from this point on, Doug, I don't think people understand how critical it is. One of the things Tom, this is what blew a lot of people's mind when I first started on talk radio 20-some years ago in KHNC, Johnstown, Colorado. I said, the entities, and I use that term then too, and they call them globalists, occultists, Satanists, whatever. The point is that they're literally, the scientific arm of them are literally out looking for some of the most evil men in history, because Jesus talks about, the demons. When the demons go out of one person, they go walking in dark places looking for someone else. So imagine the reconstitution of the most villainous people on the planet, including Nimrod, including everybody that has been of legendary and evil fame. You can go to Hitler, you can go to Mao, Stalin, you name it. And imagine those evil spirits once again becoming reincarnated in genetically modified bodies made out of the DNA. You probably know how well that went over 25 years ago, Tom. It didn't. But Doug, one of the things that's the problem is this, and no man understands the calling of another man except they who have received the calling. You can see the fruit of the calling, you can look back, but at the end of the day, the guy that's called of God has to answer to God, and there's never going to be universal acceptance. I remember frustratingly seeking God on this, and he just dropped this into my spirit. No word of God spoken by a man of God is ever accepted by the people of God at the time it's given. And I'm being told, some of you might want to check it to see, but I'm being told that the Charisma News article pulled, somebody's trying to pull it up, and they said there's nothing there. I don't know if someone's listening in real time, but if you are, shame on you. Because again, you know, there's a difference in the Old Testament and prophets that want to speak nice and
Hey, I was
wonderful
never
things
here. Good
to
to see
people
you.
versus those who declared the will of God. And the ones that declared the will of God didn't end up basically having champagne dinners and caviar dreams, okay? But they ended up basically being put to death ultimately for their testimony. The two probably greatest prophets that is accepted, or an exception, would be Enoch and Elijah. And so when we're coming together, we are basically pieces of the puzzle. We're not the whole puzzle. But God is now starting to bring puzzle pieces together that most could not even seen the puzzle, let alone believe it was a puzzle that was being pieced together for the end time. Daniel talks about knowledge increasing and then being told by the angel, seal it up, Daniel, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, for knowledge will run to and fro. Well, right now, it's almost impossible. Tom, you know this. Just keeping up with the transhumanist articles on a daily basis is almost an impossibility. So here's my dilemma, everyone. How do I take 45 years of stuff I've been writing about, and then for the last 25 years broadcasting about, and how do I set that, and here's a word that I never thought would be coming out of my mouth, a linear and consistent fashion. Well, I got, like, for the record, I have, you know, my PowerPoint that's kind of, for me, the first time, but it's not going to be show and tell.
They have weaponized it, haven't they, Diane? They've also weaponized your tax guys. Yeah, they've also done that as well to your tax foods.
Be some pretty amazing stuff. Like I said, when you're dealing with
revenue.
the history of the world recorded, there's a reason why everybody was building solar observatories. There's a reason why everyone was worshiping the equinox. There's a reason why all this stuff is going on. And simply this, the ancients were terrified, absolutely terrified of the heavens and what their oral traditions. It was basically the Egyptian priest of Sais who said to Solon, Plato's grandfather, I think it was, that he said, when it comes to understanding the universe and understanding the catastrophic and cataclysmic events, you Greeks are but children. And again, so when we're talking about Adam and going forth from Adam, but when we're talking about the Table of Kings in the Sumerian time period, it's so hard for people to understand that in the scripture, God made it clear he didn't originally create the world without form and void, tohu and bohu, but they became that way due to the catastrophic and cataclysmic judgment on the earth of the angelic civilization. If you go to Obadiah, and it's only one chapter, and it says, though you set your nest amongst the stars, yet will I bring you down. There was a planet called Rahab, and I'm going to be talking about this. Well, when you start talking about orbital...
That's unusual. I was never here. I never knew they did that.
Bode's law, Roche's limit. The bottom line is you've got to show it visually so people can not only grasp it, but then you understand why when you're looking at some of the most ancient Sumerian stelae, when you're looking at the giants who are sitting on thrones and there's little people, they're not children, standing at their knees as these guys are seated, and you see all sorts of star charts, and even, by the way, all the cave paintings in, Lascaux, France, and some of these newer places, they're finding out they were monumental star charts. And some of the star charts are so advanced that there's no way earth-dwelling, quote, cave dwellers could have known that. So where did they get that information? Tom and I both categorically reject the fact that somehow a paramecium had a date with a E. coli bacteria, and somehow they made it and produced human beings. Okay? But that's about as ridiculous as it gets. Because as Carl Sagan used to say, billions and billions of years. No, it isn't billions and billions of years. It's basically the catastrophic judgment of God on a pre-angelic civilization that was on Earth. And so we're talking about the times that were, the golden era, the times that people, that we get get little glimpses of, but we don't have a total understanding. The Word of God is true. There's nothing that's hidden that won't be revealed. And when you understand the wars that have taken place in heaven, the hatred for those who hate Jesus Christ, the absolute spiritual war that whether you want to be a participant in or not, you are in. The end times are unfolding before us. And, again, I got to get over this. I'm fixated right now on the mentality of Charisma Magazine, because charisma comes from the word charismata, or, from which we get the word charismatic, and it means gifted. Well, it's talking about the gifts of the Holy Spirit, not I think, you think, we know. By the way, I'm a knight of the round table, a knight of Malta, a knight of this, a knight of that, and I want to say good night, wake up, arise, for the light has come. You see, anything that's shrouded in secrecy and mystery is suspect, because they talk about ancient civilizations being, if you will, beneficiaries of the mystery religions. So as we're talking about all these events in Branson, I believe that there's going to come such a clarity and such an understanding, because it's only the Spirit of God that can give the spirit of wisdom and give the spirit of understanding. And obviously, the people of God have lacked it. And for those who believe that this thing can be won in the natural with an argument, good luck. The powers of darkness have stolen the narrative. You're seeing it in the incessant attack on the president. I'm just getting emails from some guy that's basically, he must have just stopped off on Earth from another planet saying, it's all you people who voted for Trump that are bringing this on. And of course, he's the defender of the faith. So get beyond that. Get beyond and see something. God uses the technology of the wicked to destroy the wicked. Do I believe that everything you see in Houston and on the East Coast forming right now is man-made? Absolutely. Can God use it? Absolutely. Does God put it in their hearts, evil ones, to destroy themselves? Absolutely. So there is no conflict between the technology of those who seek to destroy mankind and God, who is above mankind, the creator of mankind, and rules over all devil kind, is in charge, and he is using their technology to make war. And so to make war on the saints. And Tom quoted it. See, here's the deal, Doug. If I could, I would ask, and I'm serious, Lord, that heaven would literally pour a bucket of ice water over everyone's heads, okay? And literally wake them up from the slumber. When you read about the mind control, neural mapping,
neural mapping, look, he's making up all these silly terms. Steve Quayle's a bit of a wanker, I reckon.
All the stuff that DARPA is doing, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, is doing to map the brain, to control the brain, to wipe away consciousness, to wipe away any good feelings, to take away humanity. That's the bottom line in all of it. And the killer bots and the robots and the insane argument that even Elon Musk is making that, AI is the end of us. And well, of course, but then they're using it and integrating everything they do. And
God
it's
bless.
no loss, is it, that the majority of techno files and the heads of some of the biggest companies in the world.
I'm out soon too.
Blew a lot of people's mind when I first started on talk radio 20-some years ago in KHNC, Johnstown, Colorado. I said, the entities, and I use that term then too, and they call them globalists, they call it the Satanists, whatever. The point is that they're literally, the scientific arm of them are literally out looking for some of the most evil men in history, because Jesus talks about, the demons. When the demons go out of one person, they go walking in dark places looking for someone else. So imagine the reconstitution of the most villainous people on the planet, including Nimrod, including everybody that has been of legendary and evil fame. You can go to Hitler, you can go to Mao, Stalin, you name it. And imagine those evil spirits once again becoming reincarnated in genetically modified bodies made out of the DNA. You probably know how well that went over 25 years ago, Tom. It didn't. But Doug, one of the things that's the problem is this, and no man understands the calling of another man except they who have received the calling. You can see the fruit of the calling. You can look back, but at the end of the day, the guy that's called of God has to answer to God, and there's never going to be universal acceptance. I remember frustratingly seeking God on this, and he just dropped this into my spirit. No word of God spoken by a man of God is ever accepted by the people of God at the time it's given. And I'm being told, some of you might want to check it to see, but I'm being told that the Charisma News article polled, somebody's trying to pull it up, and they said there's nothing there. I don't know if someone's listening in real time, but if you are, shame on you. Because again, you know, there was a difference in the Old Testament of prophets that wanted to speak nice and wonderful things to the people versus those who declared the will of God. And the ones that declared the will of God didn't end up basically having champagne dinners and caviar dreams, okay? But they ended up basically being put to death ultimately for their testimony. The two probably greatest prophets that is accepted, or an exception, would be Enoch and Elijah. And so when we're coming together, we are basically pieces of the puzzle. We're not the whole puzzle. But God is now starting to bring puzzle pieces together that most could not even seen the puzzle, let alone believe it was a puzzle that was being pieced together for the end time. Daniel talks about knowledge increasing and then being...
Post the link on Messenger. I'm just about to hang up, Han.
Oh, by the angel sealed up, Daniel, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, for knowledge shall run to and fro.
Can you post me the link in Messenger to them guys, please, Han?
Well, right now,
you find good
it's
channels.
Almost impossible. Tom, you know this. Just keeping up with the transhumanist articles on a daily basis is almost an impossibility. So here's my dilemma, everyone. How do I take 45 years of stuff I've been writing about, and then for the last 25 years broadcasting about, and how do I set that, and here's a word that I never thought would be coming out of my mouth, a linear and consistent fashion. Well, I got, like, for the record, I have, you know, my PowerPoint that's kind of, for me, the first time, but it's not going to be show and tell. It's going to be some pretty amazing stuff. Like I said, when you're dealing with the history of the world recorded, there's a reason why everybody was building solar observatories. There's a reason why everyone was worshiping the equinox. There's a reason why all this stuff is going on. And simply this, the ancients were terrified, absolutely terrified of the heavens and what their oral traditions. It was basically the Egyptian priest of Sais who said to Solon, Plato's grandfather, I think it was, that he said, when it comes to understanding the universe and understanding the catastrophic and cataclysmic events, you Greeks are but children. And again...
Sure, I was never here, post them.
So when we're talking about Adam and going forth from Adam, but when we're talking about the Table of Kings in the Sumerian time period, it's so hard for people to understand that in the scripture, God made it clear he didn't originally create the world without form and void, tohu and bohu, but they became that way due to the catastrophic and cataclysmic judgment on the earth of the angelic civilization. If you go to Obadiah, and it's only one chapter, and it says, though you set your nest amongst the stars, yet will I bring thee down. There was a planet called Rahab, and I'm going to be talking about this. Well, when you start talking about orbital physics, Bode's law, Roche's limit, the bottom line is you've got to show it visually so people can not only grasp it, but then you understand why when you're looking at some of the most ancient Sumerian stelae, when you're looking at the giants who are sitting on thrones and there's little people, they're not children, standing at their knees as these guys are seated, and you see all sorts of star charts, and even, by the way, all the cave paintings in, Lascaux, France, and some of these newer places, they're finding out they were monumental star charts. And some of the star charts are so advanced that there's no way earth-dwelling, quote, cave dwellers could have known that. So where did they get that information? Tom and I both categorically reject the fact that somehow a paramecium had a date with a E. coli bacteria, and somehow they made it and produced human beings. Okay? But that's about as ridiculous as it gets. Because as Carl Sagan used to say, billions and billions of years. No, it isn't billions and billions of years. It's basically at a...
Okay, it's looping now, guys. I'm going to hang up then. Bit of a disjointed show today. Sorry about that. See you tomorrow, guys.